Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Watch Diet podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McElroy. So excited to be here with you. Thankful for the opportunity to really come to you all as dads, as fathers, as family members, to just share and have great conversation throughout. So we got a phenomenal gentleman here with us today. Someone I've known for, it's been a minute,
at
man.
least maybe a decade now.
I think it's been over a decade.
Over a decade.
Somewhere around in there.
Crazy.
Mr. Camren Harris is here with us. We're super excited to have you, man. And I've watched a lot. It's amazing to see just where you've grown from where our friendship first started back in the day at Central Ohio Young Black Dems.
Man.
To where you are today. So I want to dive right in, man. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're at today.
Love to, man. First, thank you. Again, for thinking of me for this. I love what you're doing with this podcast. Really shining a light on letting us tell our stories, right? Our side of things where fathers really don't always get that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the chance. Again, as you mentioned, Camren Harris, born and raised here in Columbus. Columbus has always been home up until about a little bit after college. I left, went to Cleveland for a little while for about 3-4 years, went to DC. And then my wife and I, we had a little girl and was like, it's time to come on back home, be around grandparents, aunts, uncles, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm a father of 2. Charlie's my little girl. She's 3 right now, and Aiden, who's 7 months. So we're in the thick of it, as people say. But it's good. I'm loving it, loving every minute.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Out there fighting for your life at this point.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I'm sure Charlie kind of keeps you running and going.
She runs the house.
Yeah?
Charlie runs the house, yeah.
Oh, man. How much of your personality do you see in her?
A lot. So she definitely has my wife's, personality in a way of very direct, discreet, won't open up to you unless she knows you.
Yeah.
She has my stubbornness, right? She does not like asking for help. She wants to do it herself. She'll be fine until she falls. And so I'm like, I'm here to help you. She's like, no, Dad, no. So yeah, that's been the challenge, right? That's one of the things.
That's awesome. Now, how about Aiden? I mean, I know he's young, but has his personality started to come out?
Man, super laid back.
Yeah.
He recently started daycare a few months ago. And his teachers are like, he's probably the most laid back baby we've ever had.
Really?
And it was like, he's just so calm. He just looks, he doesn't cry. He only cries when he's hungry.
Yeah.
And everybody in our family is like, oh yeah, that's Camren, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's all you.
So he's really starting to come into his personality, man. And,
that's
and,
awesome.
And they love it.
That's awesome, man. Hey, dad of 2, it's a different world, man.
Yeah.
It's a different challenge out here.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. I mean, thinking about that, now your current day job, what do you do today?
Yeah, man. So I'm a public policy manager for the Alzheimer's Association.
Okay.
I've been with the association for 2 years. Absolutely love it. It's one of those jobs where I thought, when I saw the job description, I'm like, I matched some of the duties and responsibilities. When I got it, I fell in love with it, man.
Yeah.
And I'm having such a ball doing the work that we're doing. Our goal is to, have a world one day without Alzheimer's. And so what I do, I take our message and mission to the state house, to our federal legislators, try to create policy that helps create a better future for those who are living with the disease, for caregivers, and then a whole bunch of nuanced stuff like funding and research funding and what we're doing in terms of access to healthcare. So absolutely loving it, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Alzheimer's is something that's very personal to you,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. So how I ended up at the Alzheimer's Association, as I mentioned, my wife and I relocated from DC back home.
Mm-hmm.
This was the job I landed on, the job I was lucky to receive. And I was interested in for 2 reasons, personal and professional. I'll start with the professional. Been in public policy all my career, right out of college. I worked at the State House, worked on Capitol Hill. And one of my legislative portfolios, was always healthcare. When I was in Cleveland, when I was on DC, I've always worked on healthcare policy, Medicare, Medicaid, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so this was a natural fit, especially older adult healthcare.
Yeah.
So that's the professional side. I was already familiar with the association, already familiar with their work. They're already in the healthcare space. But personally, my grandfather had dementia. And those of you who know me, he's my hero, right?
Yeah.
That's my guy, it's my dog.
Yeah.
He suffered from dementia, and I was with him in the latter stages of it.
Yeah.
I was the one driving him around, me and my aunt, my mom every now and again. But out of everybody in our family, he'd be like, I want Camren to take me to the bank. I want Camren to, take me to go get my hair cut, to go get some coffee.
Yeah.
And I saw a whole lot that my family didn't see. with his battle with dementia. And so, you know, as cliche as it may sound, that's my other reason, right? You know, if I can make somebody's life better than what my grandfather's life was, you know, at the latter end of his life, then I've done my part. So that's how I ended up there, personal and professionally, at the Alzheimer's Association.
That's awesome. I mean, but for you to be able to share that, bro, that's amazing, right? That's something that you're taking life experience and you're saying, hey, I want to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And I want to make action and change, but specifically for others to be in a better space. And how can we grow that? And I mean, I've watched so many of your interviews, so many of your State House speeches and all. I mean, amazing, bro. And for those that don't know, please go out there, take a look, because this brother right here is doing it when it comes to really making change, though. And that's amazing, because when I stop and I think about it, for me, right, when I look at you as a father, you're a father of two, you're doing your thing, you have a family, beautiful family.
Thank you.
And at the end of the day, it's about how can you make it better, not only just for other people's things, but for yourself, right? And educating yourself and things that go from there. I don't know the difference as far as like Alzheimer's itself and dementia. Is that something that's hereditary? Is that something that you have to be concerned about even just for yourself?
Sure. So yeah, I think there's definitely a concern. Like if you have a family history of it, there's certainly a higher risk or an elevated risk. But just because somebody in your family had it does not guarantee that you'll get it.
Okay.
There are some very specifics of a lot of science that researchers look at. There's this thing called the APO4 gene.
Okay.
That elevates your risk a little more. But again, that doesn't necessarily guarantee it. So family history does play a role. Age plays a role. And I would caution everybody that if there is a history, if your grandfather had it and his brother and his sister, or, you know, your aunt had it, definitely, you know, do your part to get educated on it, to be more aware. But it does not guarantee that you'll get it.
Gotcha.
And there are several forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is just the most common one. They occur for about 60% of dementia cases.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So as a father myself, right, are there things that you would tell me to just be cognizant of, thinking of? What are those things?
Yeah, man, especially as a Black man, right? We know is that Black Americans are 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia, right? Which is insane to really think about. So definitely as a Black man, I would say pay attention to your health. All aspects of it. We say at the association, what's good for your heart is what's good for your brain. Okay. So thinking of, you know, what you're eating, getting an adequate amount of sleep, you know, all the things that you already know what to do, be more cognizant, especially as you get older. And then if there are some noticeable changes in your memory or thinking or so forth, then don't be ashamed of it. Feel free to contact your physician, talk to your family about it, because the earlier detection or diagnosis, the better. And then in some cases, it may not even be dementia that may be setting in, and maybe something else. And I tell people all the time, you do not have dementia if you lay down your keys and you forget where your keys are, right?
I was about to say, listen.
Right. So what really should cause some concern is when you have your keys and you don't know what they're for, right? Where the key go, that kind of thing. So, you know, laying down your keys and forgetting where they are happens all the time, right? Yeah. You forget, you know, mom's recipe for macaroni and cheese that you've been making all your life, you know, things like that. That causes some concern, right? But yeah, man, if you lose your keys, you're fine.
You're fine. Listen, because I'll be standing there with my phone, like, what am I? I'm trying to figure out where it's at, you know, on the phone talking to somebody. That got you. Now, I know for you, just because from a personal side, right, and our friendship, your grandfather was huge in your life, right? And I know the other side of you, outside of the professional, is in the ministry side.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me a little bit about that and his influence in your life.
Yeah, man. So my grandfather was a pastor here in Columbus for 36 years, man. Wow. Long story, pastorate. So we grew up in the church. My mom was in the choir. Aunts were ushers, and uncles were deacons. We were in the children's, like we was at the church every day, man. And you know, I'm glad to have that experience now. We used to joke, you know, and kid around all the time, like, Mom, I don't feel like going to church. But it was so formative to me in my faith journey and in my life, right? My commitment to service and uplifting the community came from the church, right? That's what I was taught. That's what the church demonstrated. And so that really shaped me who I am. And so as I began to grow older, I started really discerning a call to ministry as a senior in high school, man. My senior year, heading into my senior year, one of my coaches, Teddy Caesar, at the time he was an associate minister at First Church under Bishop Clark. And I asked him, I'm like, man, you know, how do you know if you're called to ministry, right? You know, that kind of sparked lit the flame, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so Coach C's was, you know, kind of helping me there. And then also my grandfather, I went to him, and those two guys really helped me, prayed for me, guided me through that.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I was like, okay, Lord, I know I'm called to preach, but God, I'm 17, 18 years old, right? Can we put this a little further down the road? I'm about to start college, right? Nobody want to go into college being a preacher, if I'm being honest. But, you know, after fighting the call for so long, man, like Jeremiah said, it's like a fire shut up in your bone. I literally tried to run, man. Like I accepted it, but I'm like, okay, God, can you just, you know, let me get through college real quick? But I couldn't, man. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't stop praying. I felt it. There were some clear signs that God was really orchestrating in my life to really show me, to be like, hey, Camren, like, it's now.
This is where you're supposed to be.
It's not later. It's now.
Right.
And so heading into it was my freshman year of college, heading into the spring semesters when I gave my initial sermon. Okay. And from there, man, this has been a wonderful journey, some highs and some lows, but I'm grateful for the experience, grateful for people like my grandfather who was able to help lead me and guide me in that early formative stage, man, because I didn't know. I wanted to run from it. But I'm so glad, man. I'm glad I didn't.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, ministry is a tough gig. Yeah, a lot of people look at, I'm gonna call it what it is, false prophet space today, right? Yep. And they look at that space and they go, oh man, this person's doing all this and they're getting all that money and all this, you know, stuff that really is what it's not about, right? Like, and so to see you kind of going and blossoming, man, I mean, I enjoy seeing the sermonette snippets that I get on Instagram and all, and it's amazing to see. How does Charlie feel about, you know, seeing Dad up in that stage and on that pulpit space?
So now, I mean, she gets it. Sundays, she knows Dad is in the pulpit. Early, like maybe when she was 1.5, 2, she would try to come down, run through the aisleway. I'm like, Charlie, you know, you got to wait.
Right.
But I mean, she loves it. People at church love her. She loves the people at church. Every time that she sees a cross now, she says Jesus, right? Because I mean, it's really starting to formulate in her. Me and my wife have been intentional about, you know, just trying to shape her and train her up in that way. But she, you know, at this point, you know, she's like, oh, that's Dad, right? She sees me in the pulpit or rewatch online. I rewatch from Sunday. Yep. Oh, you know, Daddy's at church, and she see the cross. So she's loving it. She's learning. And you probably get the same thing, man. There's so many illustrations that I get from my kids now. Absolutely. that really hits home to help correlate the message or the point that God is really trying to deliver. So Charlie has been an inspiration for a few of my sermons where I talk about her in the middle of it. But yeah, man, she's loving it, man. She after church now, she does come down. Everybody, you know, hey Charlie, hi Charlie. She comes, she want her dad.
Yeah,
so, that's a beautiful thing.
That's all. So you're raising a preacher's kid. You realize that?
Yeah. Raising a preacher's kid, man. Yep.
Got you. Okay, so I'm gonna dive into that for a second. Yeah. How do you, in your mind, because I mean, we both grew up in church. We both grew up in that space, right? Going to church all day, every day. We know the stigma
absolutely
of PKs, right?
Yep.
How are you focused on just allowing Charlie to grow in knowledge of God, grow in knowledge of Jesus, right? And being in that space. But how are you also helping her to navigate today's world, bro? Because it's difficult, right? It's hard.
It scares me, bro. To be honest, it scares me.
Legit.
I tell people all the time now, like becoming a father, like my prayer life is different.
Yeah.
Like, it's more, I don't even know the word for it, man, but I'm always praying for my kids.
Yeah.
Seeing where society's at, where society's going, some of the issues of the day, knowing, you know, the stigmas that are out there against, you know, my son as a black man growing up in today's world, my daughter as a black woman, right?
Yeah.
People are going to judge her and she's going to be an angry black woman, right? All this kind of stuff. And so one, I have to stay grounded in prayer, right? You know, I ask for guidance and discernment of, you know, trying to teach them the right things the right way. One of my goals as a parent and then the minister hat is to just ensure that Charlie has a life, right? That she lives. I'm not trying to pressure her or Aiden to do anything in ministry. I'm not trying to pressure them to be like they have to be perfect anyway. Of course, I'm going to raise them with morals and decency, but I don't want them to feel that external pressure from me because they're going to get it from the church or from other folks around. So it's just really allowing her and him is our goal to let them live, man. Let them have questions. They're going to have questions about faith, about God. Allow them to really develop their own personal relationship with Jesus. That's my goal, man. That's my prayer. I want to see them come down the aisle and say yes to Jesus one day, I'm gonna have a tear. That's gonna be a day. I'm gonna ugly cry, right? But like I really just want to cultivate that pathway and then live it in front of them. I think that's a big thing, right? Really kind of live it in front of them so that they, as a curiosity and the pull and the call to commit their life and give their life to Jesus is something that's natural. It's not forced.
Yeah.
I won't ever try to force my kids to get in the pulpit or preacher. I'm not that kind of person. If God calls them to it, great. If not, that's great, right? There's a different call or purpose on their life. So it's really just trying to let them be kids, let them grow, not give them any extra pressure. Because like you said, stigma's already out there.
It's there.
Yeah, man. And there's going to be some tough roads ahead.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's... Man, I think about it all the time, and similar, when we're after a service that I preach and going and watching Lauren go up and kind of pay attention to like, okay, what's this? What's the reaction? How are people doing? Seeing that in her eyes is always very interesting to me, but similar, right? Just wanting them to be able to live, wanting them to be able to get their own understanding, cultivate that own relationship and all. So definitely understand that. Aiden, listen, that's a little different though, isn't it? Little man coming up. Yeah. How you feel about the difference between a little girl and a little boy in that space?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's definitely concerns for both, right? Just good and bad for both, right? For women growing up in church and men growing up in church and being PKs on top of that. So I mean, I think the same approach, at least for right now, right? Not trying to pressure him in any way, because I mean, even now, a few weeks ago, somebody came up and they saw him in his car seat as we were getting ready to leave church. He's like, oh, he's gonna be a preacher. He's gonna be a preacher. I just smile. I don't affirm it. I don't do anything like that. If God calls him, God calls him. But I'm not going to give him that pressure.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of the same kind of approach is to let him live, let him grow.
Yeah.
Again, cultivate a environment where, hey, this is who we are. You don't have to be ashamed of it. Don't have to run from it. But trust in God, right? I want you to develop your own relationship. Don't do it because dad's a preacher, right? Don't do it because mom is doing this in the church. But I want you to fall in love with Jesus yourself. I want you to feel the call and the pull to do what he's called you to do. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm gonna switch it a little bit. Yeah. We're gonna take it from Charlie and Aiden to there's a 17-year-old, there's an 18-year-old, there's a 19-year-old out there right now. Yeah. That's gonna maybe end up watching this, seeing you talk about your experience. What's your recommendation to them? If they hear that calling, they feel that calling, what's your thought process?
Man, just yield to the calling, right? Yield to it. It is scary, right? Because it's ministry, right? It's an honor, but it's also definitely a burden, right? Because I mean, Brandon, like one day we're going to stand before God and he's going to be like, hey, did you do what I called you to do? And that's a lot of pressure, but man, it's such a joy to be walking in your purpose, to know that you're doing it for the right reasons, that you're called, right? You're not one of those TikTok preachers or Instagram preachers who, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so glad, man. Like I watched my grandfather, obviously, in his pastorate. And as I was discerning the call, I never knew ministry as a career, as a job, right? I never knew it because he still had a 9-to-5, right? And his preacher friends had a 9-to-5.
Yep.
And so it was just a lifestyle. And so I would say to that 17, 18, 19-year-old, young person who's discerning the call, feel the call, yield to it. Yeah. Yes, it's scary at an early point. But there's no greater joy, man. There's no greater joy than walking in your purpose, knowing that you're doing what God has called you to do, and be serious about it, right? Be serious about your craft. There's gifts that God has gifted you with. You don't got to be like any other preacher. Yeah. I tell people all the time, man, I'm like, look, I don't hoop, right? Some of my other preacher friends, they do it. I'm like, if I could, I would. And for a long time, Brandon, that was really like something that really discouraged me.
Really?
But man, so many people's like, bro, you're good. Find your voice is what I'm trying to say, and be comfortable in it, and allow God to allow the Holy Spirit to work in you and do what he's called you to do.
Absolutely. No, listen, the way you present your sermons, man, I love it. I appreciate it. You get a good laugh in there as well. That's what always gets me. I'm like, Cam's got some good jokes going.
So a mentor of mine, Jared Carter Jr., man, one of my favorite preachers in the world. He said, preaching is best through your personality. Yeah. right? So be who God called you to be. He
Absolutely.
didn't tell you to be like everybody else, right? So yeah, man, I Peter wasn't like Paul, right? You feel me?
That's
So
it. That's it.
that's preaching through your personality.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take us back to, let's see, this would have been what, 2010,
Man.
2011,
Early.
somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
Community, and specifically in the public eye, and then working in the politics and all, was our life, man.
Yeah.
It was a lot of what we were doing and where we were at.
Yep.
Interested for your perspective, now being a dad specifically, where do you see your life going? Ministry is one space and an avenue,
Yep.
but is that space of like wanting to be out there in the political world still something that's there for you?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I'm ever going to leave the area of politics, public policy.
Yeah.
What will I do in that space? I don't know. There's always public office. There's always what I do now, the lobbying side of things. There's always like the administrative, like chief of staff, legislative director. There's always the campaign side. I'm always going to be in this space. And for a long time, especially when I was in college coming up, a lot of people tried to make me choose between the two, ministry or politics, right? And I'm like, why, right? Then as I grew and learned and did some scholarship and did some research, I'm like, dude, the Black church has always been involved in both, right? So, that's why would I limit what God has placed upon my heart to do, right? Who I am. And so, I definitely think I will always be in the space of public policy and politics and in one way or another. Whatever. I think now, man, I've been in this space for over a decade now. Now I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do in this space, right? Not my plan, not what I want to do. And so that's where I'm at now. It's like, okay, let me discern where God is leading me. And with the Alzheimer's Association, I firmly believe I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Right. I didn't think I'll ever land here. Never had this on my vision board or plan for my life. But this is exactly where I'm supposed to be doing this kind of work. So definitely will still be in the space. What that looks like, I don't know, man. But I'm open to it. I'm open to wherever God leads me. So we'll see.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What would you say are your big concerns or worries when you think about your kids, when you think about where, as we said earlier, right, like where life and where society is headed? As a father, like what are your worries in those spaces?
Man, so I think what every Black parent has certainly at the forefront of your mind, right? The world is already targeting your kids for them being Black, regardless of how well they may talk or how well they may be well clothed and dressed or background, whatever the case may be. Just the stigma and the racism, right? That's just out there against Black folks. But as it relates to some of the real particulars, right? Like, man, you can get on Instagram and Facebook and just see the constant, I guess, I don't even want to call it messaging because I'm not really big into like conspiracy theories or nothing like that, but just the reality of the world, right? Of how Black women are portraying themselves more and more. And yes, that's a form of expression, et cetera, but it seems like now that's the only side of expression that we see.
Right.
Whereas you do have to be intentional to teach your children, like, hey, there are other pathways than this was being shown here. And the same for my son, right? It's how can I teach you how to be a respectable young man? How can I teach you to be a God-fearing man, a man that has manners and understand that every person that you approach is not going to welcome you? And how do you not respond in a way that's going to threaten your life? Right. Because, all it takes is one phone call to the police, right? If we're being honest, right? Or somebody to say something and, the atrocities that has gone on in history just off of an opinion of somebody else who didn't like a Black person, right? So that's what worries me, man. It's like there's going to be a day where they're both going to walk out the door, enter the world, and it's like, God, please keep my baby safe. Because I don't know. That's the fear of every parent is just, ensuring that they're okay in the world.
Do you feel like today society is tougher than when we were growing up?
Yeah, I do. Social media, man, it is a dark place. Man. It can be a dark place. It can be very beneficial, man. Very beneficial and helpful. But man, it is such a dark place in terms of what is viewed, what is out there, how quickly lies and things can spread and go viral and be manipulated to be convinced to be true. Things that are said to kids or to each other, from kids to each other. I remember, man, my sister is just a couple years younger than me. When she was at Eastmore, they created like an anonymous Eastmore page, right? And they would post stuff about kids in the school. Like, it was wild, man. And
What?
so, the Instagram page would talk about, such and such and how she was with this guy and that, it was really bad, man.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that. I think the dangers have always been there when we were growing up, our parents' generation, but I think it's definitely easier amplified now.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is a click of a.
That's it. I can type one thing out, hit send, and whether it's true or whether it's not, somebody's going to see it and somebody's going to take it and run with it from there.
Yeah. So that's probably what I think makes it a little bit more stringent now. It's like, hey, man, we got this extra thing where millions of people somebody can make a lie about my son and it can go viral, right?
And it can go viral, That's definitely the worry, the fear of today, and where we are in this society. But on the flip side of that, right, you said, as you mentioned, right, there's some positivity that's in it.
Yeah.
As you look at yourself as a dad, like, where do you see best use for social in your household? How do you and your wife use it? Because one thing I know about you two, like, y'all don't really post a ton, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
y'all are real limited on put this out. Like, where do you see that as a father, like, or even recommendations that you may have for other fathers that are in that scenario?
Yeah, man. I mean, so one, there's a lot of creeps in the world, right? Like, always cognizant about when I post my kids, how I post them, that kind of stuff. My page is private, but still, you never know. Somebody can screenshot,
Absolutely.
I don't think, prayerfully, none of my people who follow me do anything crazy with it, but you never really know.
Yeah.
So, I have that understanding of, look, once you put it out on the internet, it's out on the internet, right? We can try to archive it, delete it, whatever. There's always some kind of digital footprint. And then also being intentional about how you're using, and sharing your life, right? Yeah. Everybody doesn't have to know everything, right? Everybody doesn't have to be a part of everything. Really keeping in the forefront of your mind, like, how you want to portray you, your family, your kids to the world. So just really being diligent in that way of being strategic of how you use social media. Yeah.
Meanwhile, my family, we got a whole page just for that.
But it's smart though. But you're strategic in that manner, right?
We try to have a little fun with it.
Yeah.
And share. No, it's always interesting to me on just the difference in the thought process, which is I don't think there's a right or a wrong.
No,
everybody has that space, but I always laugh because I'm like, a lot of my people are like real strategic on what, and then you go to our family page. It's like they cooking today.
But again, like that's your strategic way of presenting your family.
Absolutely.
And how you're sharing your family with the world.
We try to be as intentional as possible with some of those things.
And I'm sure you're helping somebody, right? Somebody's looking at y'all like, that's what I want my family to be like, right? And that helps because again, there's another side of social media where people see, families breaking apart and always talking about, I hate my dad and stuff. It's possible to have a good home.
That's absolutely it. Absolutely it. So I'm gonna switch up a little bit on you. Why don't you talk about you growing up and what do you miss? Like, what do you miss about old day society or just life of Cam when he was growing up? Like, what do you miss about that you wish you could have for your kids today?
Yeah, man. I think there were intentional like spaces to go hang out with friends and be around each other, right? Okay. Now we're easily connected again by a push of a button, which is cool, which is great. And I think that has its time and place. But as my kids are learning and growing, and I look at my nieces and nephews who are 8 and 7, they're not as intentional of going to the rec center to go play basketball or going to the swimming pool or, going to, as you get older as a teenager, going to Easton. Yeah. Though I think that's what I miss. Even now as an adult, right? I mean, now as a father, a husband, priorities change and shift.
That's it.
And, I do have to be way more intentional about hanging out with my boys. But I think that's what I miss, man. Like, we used to get on our bikes, ride to God knows where to do whatever. And, that was fun. Those are memories that will cherish forever.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, I'm still in the very early stages of fatherhood and my kids are young, but I don't see that anymore, right? I don't really see kids outside playing basketball in the street anymore. Right. I noticed that I think Lifetime Fitness at Easton, they took down their basketball courts, right? Because they was like, not enough people are coming to play basketball.
Really?
Yeah, man. So it's just, I think that's what I miss, right? The intentional community, the intentional and purposeful commitment to coming together and hanging out, having
Yeah.
fun, learning from one another, man. Matter of fact, my brother-in-law was just telling me, we was at the Ohio State women's basketball game. He said, man, like, generation now, these kids, they all got basketball trainers.
Yeah.
He was like, man, we had to play on the playground. That's
We had to figure out who was the best. Right.
That's how we got better. So,
That's it.
I think that's what I miss the most, man, is having that. And we weren't doing it on purpose. We just wanted to hang out, just being intentional about being around each other.
No, I'm with you on that. It's funny. This summer, there was one moment where I had a flashback to like growing up, where all the kids in our neighborhood, all their bikes were in one driveway.
Yeah.
And you had that moment like, it used to be the normal, like that used to be normal that we would see that. And that's how we all knew where each other were at. You couldn't call all the time. But it's just funny now when you see certain things that kind of spark your memory back to those moments and those days of growing up. So yeah, I was that knucklehead that was always driving around Easton when I first got my license, playing music, got the windows down, trying to get that attention.
We all did it. Yeah.
Now I'm the old head walking like, could you turn that down?
Absolutely. Like, where your parents at, man? Yeah.
You're like, crazy. I'm trying to just walk through Easton calmly. I'm like, we've switched it up.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was good stuff. So I got a question for you. Yeah. When you think about where you are today as a father, what would you go back and tell pre-dad Camren? Like, what would you go back and say to yourself before you had kids, whether it was right before they were born or even long time before? What in your mind would you say to yourself as preparation?
Man, that is a fantastic question. What would I say to pre-dad Cam? I would say continue to be present, right? With your kids, but family and friends, right? As much as you can, right? Like obviously, again, priorities change. I'm not around my boys as much as I want to be. Mm-hmm. I'm not seeing family as often, like my extended family out of town and stuff, and as I used to. And no, let me rephrase that. I would say set boundaries with those groups, right? With those family and friends, because they miss you, right? They miss you. They want you to be around. Some may have kids, some may don't. Some kids are older and they just don't understand the phase of life that you're in. So I think going back and telling pre-dad Cam, hey, make sure you set expectations and boundaries for your inner circle, and to let them know, like, hey, I got to be here for my kids. My priorities and life has changed. Give me that grace. Yeah. So really being clear and intentional with that, because early on when Charlie was first born, I tried to strain myself, man, of just trying to keep up with the demands of what family wanted, what family expected, friends, auxiliary organizations that I was a part of, right? And I couldn't, right? And I was burning myself out, or I was missing some key moments with my wife and my daughter in those very early stages of her life. So, yeah man, I think I would tell pre-Cam to, hey, set boundaries, talk to your family, friends about how you're just going to have to grow differently and be different in this stage of life. Yeah.
As a dad today, how much time do you set aside to hang out with your boys and do the things that kind of dads still need, that space?
For sure.
Like, how much time do you set up?
For sure. Let me be clear. Like, I haven't stopped hanging out with my people. I haven't stopped seeing my family or friends. Even if anything, being a dad has made me realize that aspect of your life is necessary.
It's important.
It's really important.
Absolutely.
And so there is definitely intentional time, even if we have to plan it months in advance, weeks in advance, maybe not months, but weeks in advance, to where we hang out. So I am purposeful about that. One of my best friends, Dante, he's one of my best friends from high school. He and we find ways to connect wherever we can, right? He'll hit me. He'll be like, Cam, I know you're downtown. I'm downtown too. I just finished up a job. Let's do lunch, right? So, finding those kind of spur of the moment things. There's times where we have things planned, like during football season now. Most people either they come to church with me or they know I'm at church. After church, they say, hey, go get your nap. Let's catch the 4:00 games. Let's go to B-Dubs, right? Yeah. So that has been a consistent thing, not every Sunday, but maybe every 2 Sundays where we'll plan ahead. That gives me time as a married man. Hey, I'm hanging with the boys, right?
Yeah, I
just
need that
so right? So I think being a dad really showed how much that part of my life is needed, and then how purposeful I have to be to ensure that side time of me is still being fed.
Wait a second, did you just say you take a nap on Sundays?
Oh yeah, man, after church nap. Because my kids are still young enough where they take naps.
Okay,
my kids they have to take a nap, right? So Charlie's still on nap time at daycare, all that kind of stuff, and Aiden's obviously 7 months. So after church nap, after we get our food and stuff, oh man, yeah, it's we
taking a nap.
We taking a nap. We taking a nap. We taking a nap.
Listen,
man.
I need to be like you. I don't take naps. So after that, I'm like, let me sit down. Let me figure out something I can either do.
Yeah.
I love to play my game, so that's why a lot of times I'll take that time to do it. Yeah. I don't know. I've never been a nap person.
Man, Sunday after Sunday for sure.
Yeah.
After Sunday for
Dad
sure.
nap.
Yeah. I mean, after church on Sunday. yeah, man.
Fair. No, that's pretty dope. I mean, and it's good to hear you say, you got to be intentional about that time. You got to be intentional about setting up those boundaries for yourself and boundaries for those that are around you and important to you.
Yep.
I can't let my wife watch this episode because you said you have bi-weekly. She gonna be like, you go every Monday.
Yeah. Look,
to Spades night.
As my kids get a little older, it'll probably be weekly.
Listen, I can't go that far because they only 6. Well, they're about to be 6 and 2, 5 and 1 right now. She gonna be like,
Yeah.
Can't make that different for you, Brandon. What we doing?
Yeah.
Nah, that's good, man. That's really good. That's really good. So kind of wrapping things and pulling it all together, what do you feel today fathers are missing? What are some gaps that we as dads either aren't doing, maybe aren't talking about?
Sure.
What are some of the things in your mind we need to do a little more of as dads?
Man, so this, right? Celebrating and acknowledging dads, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're not in this alone. It can be feel lonely at times because you're on such a grind and constant goal of trying to provide, trying to do this, because you're a dad, right?
Yep.
You're their first superhero.
Yep.
So I think we as dads can do better. And I thank you for, this podcast and what you do about celebrating the good work that that fathers are doing.
Yeah.
Because again, there's so much out there that says, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. And we have our own experiences of our own childhoods and father figures or lack thereof. And so you get so caught up in a whirlwind of a routine, a day-to-day in and out of taking care of your kids and doing this, driving them there, that you don't feel like you're doing a good job because you're just doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're missing the mark. It's like bigging up and telling, your boy, hey man, you're a good father, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're a good dad, really acknowledging the effort, the time, the sacrifice that dads put in. And so if you got friends, I think one of the things that has helped me the most is that my friends who are fathers, man, they inspire me, and likewise I inspire them. And we make no shame about it by saying, hey bro, I appreciate what you're doing for your kids, right? Yeah. You do a lot. My boy Dante just told me on Monday, he said, man, you're doing a lot for your family.
Yeah.
Please know that you know that I know that. And so man, just ensuring that you have a solid community around you that is uplifting you and letting you know you're doing a good job.
Absolutely. Nah, that piece right there is critical.
Yeah.
Having that community, having those people that are letting you know, being in your space to remind you, right? Because we all go through those moments where it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're overburdened. Really? And we don't like to talk about it.
No,
if we're real honest.
Yeah.
We don't like to talk about it, right?
Yep.
And we don't like to have that conversation and be vulnerable in many of those spaces. I made a post just the other day, actually, from a conversation about that vulnerability. And sometimes you got to just break down.
Have to.
And say, hey, bro, this is what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Or this is what I'm dealing with. Or can you just be a listening ear? Is that something you find yourself doing often or finding yourself trying to get to more?
Trying to get to more. Okay. I need to do a better job. Transparently, I need to do a better job about releasing that, opening up.
Yeah.
But I have done it and said, look, man, I'm in a gauntlet right now, right? Like that's the word I'm in a gauntlet, overwhelmed, tired. Sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
You're not where you want to be, that kind of stuff with your family and where you want your family to be at. But yeah, man, definitely a place where I'm striving to get to. Haven't figured it out yet, but yeah, man, that's so critical. If I'm going to be the best father I can be, I got to learn how to do that.
That's fair. That's fair. And you said it just right. If you can be the best, you gotta work through that.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. I mean, just hearing you say that out loud for those dads that are watching it right now, having that opportunity to hear somebody else say they're working at it, they're trying to get to it, and being intentional, right, about it, and having that group is definitely very, very important. So I mean, I'm gonna wrap it up with this, but what are you looking forward to in 2025? Right, we're just a few days out from this, and you are likely going to be the last one of this series, closing it out, the beginning series. So, what are you looking forward to 2025 personally, and then as a father? You know, how's the things look?
Personally, definitely, like me and my wife are working towards some things in our personal lives. Obviously, you know, home, all that kind of stuff. But there's some other goals that we got that we're trying to achieve. So, looking forward to that.
Okay.
Looking forward to my daughter, we're at the point where we're trying to put her into things, different activities, see what sticks. She's already in a few things now. Love them all, right? So we're trying to figure out, okay, whatever doesn't stick. So we're going to try to put her in, I think, soccer this year. I'm looking forward to that, man, because like
soccer dad,
there's such a joy, man, of seeing your kid perform and do these kind of like stuff. Like it's inexplainable, really. Unexplainable joy. She's in swimming now, and she's been in swim since she's about 9 months, man. And like teachers at her school or class was like, does she swim at home? And I'm like, nah, she's just good, thankfully. But that puts such a joy in my heart. Absolutely. And seeing her smile and having fun. So looking forward to little moments like that. Also vacation, man. We didn't get to vacation this year because my wife was pregnant. Obviously had to give birth to my son. So vacation in 2025. And then as it relates to my professional life, looking to really see, it's a budget year coming up in the State House.
Okay.
So we're going to go after some dollars. We're excited to have a plan of what we're trying to get funded and allocated. Because again, to go back to what I said earlier, to how can we create a better life for somebody who's living with dementia. So a few things, personal, professional, and then also in fatherhood. My son, he's getting older, going to start crawling, walking, that kind of stuff. Like those, like it's beautiful, man. So that's what I'm looking forward to in 2025.
Good. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Listen, join Team Soccer Dad, because I'll be out there screaming, hollering, yelling. Lauren, I know, be looking at me like, would you please be quiet? I'd have had shirts made and everything. Just like, let's do it.
I'm going to be the same way. If she continues on whatever, even if she plays like chess clubs, right? I'm still going to put on a shirt with her face and put, best chess player in the city.
There you go. Listen, embarrass the mess out of her now.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, listen, Cam, man, I appreciate you coming down.
Man, thank you.
We are definitely going to have you back, because I'm going to have everybody from this first series go through and do a little convo. So hopefully you'll be a part of that.
I'd love to.
But appreciate you being here, bro. We are going to continue to watch you just thrive and do your thing. And that's amazing. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. For those that are watching in, thank you so much for being a part of it. This is season 1 wrapped up completely. So excited to start out with season 2. We got some great things coming up for finance, health, and some wellness, all that kind of good stuff. So thank you for joining us here on the Watch That podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all the good things.